Hey there, Liz. Good to
Hey,
see you.
good to see
Thank you for
you.
making time today that we could begin our talk on the observation process.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that just once again, thank you for taking that time. I know we are, we're busy. You know, I know parent teacher conferences this week, and it's just crazy busy. But with that, we know we're starting the cycle of observations as quarter one is coming to a close. And so today we're going to do our pre meeting and we're going to talk about, we're going to go through, we're going to talk about a few different areas. But before we dive into that, tell me a little bit about your experience you've had here so far at Booker T.
Oh, okay. Well, I started in the fall of '05.
Okay? Yeah.
Too long. But I adore this school.
Okay.
Um, they always say at Booker T, we bleed black and orange, our school colors.
Yeah.
I feel like I bleed black and orange.
Yeah.
And I really love the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I'm here. It's for the kids.
So since '05, I mean, you've been here, I mean, this is your 17th
17th year.
17th year. And so with that, you said you're here for the kids, which is just awesome to hear. What about, if I could ask, what about teaching and being with the kids? What is so, what is keeping you here? Because I know, we know that there's turnover and things like that, but what keeps you here at Booker T?
I think honestly, it's just like seeing their development. I know you know. I love seeing the light bulb go off,
Okay.
and I feel like I get a lot of those moments,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's just amazing to see it,
Yeah.
to experience it, and now I have siblings and cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, I was told about you," and I
Yeah.
was like, "I hope good things."
Good.
But yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And it's just so good to hear. And it's so awesome to have just experienced teachers like you who are just passionate about our students and passionate about their development. So, to kind of go through, we are, as I said, we're starting our observation cycles. And typically, how that goes, we start off with a pre-interview, which is what you and I are going to be doing, talking about your classroom and talking about areas of feedback. Um, we start here and then we go into our observation, where I'll come into your classroom and I'll observe, I'll take notes, and then after that, we'll have our post observation. And now I want to tell you about this process. This process is not that gotcha moment that I'm trying to catch you doing. No, what really my focus and my hope as your administrator is that we can work together and we can work on those cycles of continuous improvement. And so with that, before we dive in to when I'll observe and things like that, tell me a little bit about your classroom. If I walked in, if I walked into your classroom, what are things I would see? What's a normal cycle of what a class looks like?
Oh, that's a great question. I hope that they're all sitting and they're focused.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've learned over the 17 years, I think my teaching has gotten better. I used to talk really fast,
Okay.
and I've learned to talk slower.
Okay.
And I've learned how to make the information like digestible.
Okay.
Like right now, we're working on how to write a document based question, and we're just breaking it down because I know the whole picture is really overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I hope that I'm doing a good job of just teaching them the little pieces and making it understandable, and they can understand me, and they can see what we're doing.
Okay.
And I hope they can ask questions. Today I gave them time to work, and then I just walked around the room and asked questions, and it was amazing how many kids had a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's so important to have that one-on-one time.
Okay. Yeah, these are all great, and I just hear that passion that that passion that you just have, that you're, really trying to keep those students engaged. So, with kind of digging a little bit more into one of the themes I feel like I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
is it was engagement, right?
Yes.
Is that through the asking of questions and um, through that. So, can you talk with engagement? How would you rate your students, um, or in this year? How would you say what is their engagement levels normally
It's much better. I'm sure you know, like the phone is a huge distraction.
like? Okay.
I feel like it's glued to their hand. So one thing that I've done, and it's been super helpful, is I have participation points.
Okay.
And I told them, I said, I'm going to take away points for being on your phone, talking, sleeping.
Okay.
Also, the earbud thing, I don't know if they realize what a distraction that is.
Yeah.
So I think that's my constant battle, is trying to take away those distractions. But having participation points, that has really helped.
And that has been a positive.
Oh,
said, correct?
so much.
Yeah.
Because they get like the full 100 points.
Okay.
And then I just say, don't make it where I can take away points.
Okay.
Like keep those points. That's easy points.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's surprising how many I keep taking them.
Okay.
And then just recently, there's been a few who are always on their phone because they can't let go of it. And
Mhm.
I've had one-on-one conversations with them.
Okay.
Like, you need to put that away.
Absolutely. And so, would you say, I know we're only getting close to, we're getting close to the end of that first quarter, but would you say from this, have you seen improvement even from the start of the first year, or at the start of the school, to where we are now, those distractions of phones or listening to music
Oh.
has gone down?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
Great.
And I noticed in my AP US history class, I don't think they were prepared to do the workload, but now they seem to be much better. They're in a groove, they're in a routine. They were first like, what is this? And I'm like, welcome to A-Push.
Okay.
We gotta get going. And so it was kind of bumpy there at the start because there was a lot of pushback. But then I think they noticed I was holding my own.
Mm-hmm.
And now the classes are so much better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's sounding like, and I totally understand with COVID last year and then coming to this year that there was that rocky start, but it's really sounding that we're getting students more engaged. The phone problem is starting to be minusculed, and you're seeing success with that. The rigor of your AP courses, where students, as I said, from last year to this year, maybe that, understanding the rigor, and that they are now coming up and they're really diving in and pushing. And all of that sounds awesome, sounds good, that students are, there is that improvement from the start to now. So with that, you being such an experienced teacher and having, you've been in education longer than I have, but part of my responsibility as your supervisor is I'm here to help support you.
Okay.
And so as we start this cycle of observations, what is one area, when I come into your classroom, what's one thing that you would say, hey, Mr. Anderson, this is one area I want you to look out for and maybe provide me feedback on?
Okay. I immediately thought of two.
Okay.
Is it okay to have two?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
good. Well, one I would say just student behavior.
Okay.
Are they paying attention? And then maybe one thing I've done, I don't know if you can tell in this classroom, I try to make it where there's an aisle down the middle. And I noticed this year I'm doing a lot more walking.
Okay.
Walking around, that really does make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially for the kids back here,
Okay.
I notice, I think they can hide.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
I'm standing by them, they're like, what? So I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
And then also, I'd love for you to look at just like how I'm presenting information. Does it make sense?
Okay.
I hope it does.
Okay.
You know, like I just love that there's another pair of eyes on me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me to restate two things you want me to look for.
Okay.
First of all, you're saying student behavior, but you're really more specifically, we're saying paying attention, or we could go back to that word engagement.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that word engagement. And as you said, one strategy you've already been working on this year is that you've been pacing the classroom.
Yeah.
And so that. And then presenting, you said presenting curriculum or present when you're up here. When to kind of clarify, when you say presenting, are you saying when you're lecturing? Are you saying when you're just providing directions if it's a group? What if you could just clarify a little bit for me?
Kind of both.
Okay.
When you come in, we're going to be talking about the documents that they're using in this document-based question. So we're going to try to break down the documents.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask them, what did they get? Because I love hearing what they have to say.
Okay.
I think it's more powerful than what I have to say.
Absolutely.
But then I'll show them what I say. But
okay.
I want to hear what they have to say.
Okay. Absolutely. So breaking down documents, going back to that DBQ, you're working on that document-based questioning, and they're preparing to write that essay. But,
yes.
But you guys are in the analysis stage right now.
Right.
Okay. So those are awesome things, and absolutely. So when and we'll talk about that date, but to just restate what you said,
okay.
Going back over it, is first we're thinking about engagement. Are students engaged? And really I'm going to look at that as what you said. You started pacing the classroom. And so that's the first thing I'm going to look at is how pacing, as you said, you're saying it's been effective. And so I'm going to look at that and be like, and see that engagement in practice.
Oh, great.
And then you said when presenting and specifically looking at breaking down those documents.
Yes.
And you said instead of you presenting, but students really explaining, giving that information, sharing. And so with that, we're thinking those higher order of thinking skills, that
yes.
application and analysis. So those are great and absolutely things that I will look for to help
Wonderful.
you provide feedback on. So with that, one of the final things before you go, I know you're really busy, but before you go, what's a good day for me to come in and observe that class for you?
Thursday.
Okay.
That'll be a great time. And that's what we're doing. We're breaking down those documents. So I hope they are ready to share and you get to see that.
Absolutely. And I bet they will be, and I'm excited to come into your class. And before I let you go, I just really want you, as you know, I know, the observation, evaluation, I'm not here this is not a got you thing, right? I'm just here to be that second pair of eyes, as you said, to be that second pair to give you any kind of feedback, to give you feedback to help you improve in your practice, but also to ultimately help the students.
Yes, that's like so wonderful to hear. And I think that's one thing I've gotten better at.
Mm-hmm.
When I was like a brand new teacher, the thought of this was terrifying.
Okay.
But now, older in teaching, it's like, oh, I want that.
Yeah.
I want someone to come in. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I thank you. That's so comforting.
Awesome. Well, Liz, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
And I'm excited. You said on Thursday, so I'll come in, I'll watch you, and then we
Perfect.
will set up that post-conference, and we'll talk about that observation.
Awesome. That sounds great.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey there, Liz.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Glad it's Friday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for meeting with me. We're going to do this post observation to talk about, when I was in your room yesterday. So with that, before we begin, I just want to give you such praise that, you're standing out in front of, kids are entering your room, you're welcoming them, and then right when you get started, internet's out. And I mean, just such a moment. And so before we get into anything, just want to praise you for the fact that to adapt, and as teachers, as educators, the adaptation that we have to do, and you just did awesome with that.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get started. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna talk a little bit about that pre-conference. We talked about a few areas you wanted to work on, and so I'm just gonna reiterate those, kind of bring those back up, and then next we're gonna talk about the lesson. And so I'm going to give you some time to share, to reflect on that, to think about how did that go with those two criteria that we were working towards. And then I'm going to, as that second set of eyes, I'm going to talk about observations that I saw. And so to start off, we, on Tuesday, we talked about that during our pre-conference, that a few areas that you wanted me to look for was first the student attention, we first started saying behavior, and then really focusing with student attention and engagement.
Yeah.
And that was that first one. The second one was presenting information or curriculum, and both as in the lecturing base, but also giving those precise directions.
Yeah.
And so those were those two. So with that, thinking back to the lesson that I came and I observed, how did you observe student attention during that lesson that I watched?
Well, I think the Wi-Fi threw all of us off.
Yeah.
Because so many of them are like, the Wi-Fi doesn't work. I can't look at my paper.
Right.
And so I was like, oh darn, that's gonna affect participation. And so, that was my first concern.
Yeah.
And so this was our first document-based question, which it's a big part of APUSH.
Yes.
AP US History. The kids here call it APUSH.
Yeah.
But so many people are like, what is that? And I'm like, Advanced Placement, United States History. But I know this is our first one we wrote.
Yeah.
And the thing I noticed is all my classes, they were like, what do we do? What's they're bright-eyed. And
Okay.
so I was hoping for more engagement, participating, but I could tell they were really thankful for seeing and hearing what I did.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was hoping that was helpful. Yeah. But them not being able to participate, so many of them didn't have their paper.
Yeah.
And that was crazy.
Yeah, being on their Chromebooks and you just couldn't get to it. Yeah.
I did notice it came back.
It did. It did come back. I think it was about 25 to almost 30 minutes. So we're almost at the halfway or past halfway. It did eventually come back. But absolutely, with one of the great things of technology is that
Yes.
there's so much things, but then
And
when
it
it's
doesn't work.
when it's down, it doesn't work. So,
Yeah.
any other observations about student attention that you saw?
I think it was probably the same kids talking.
Okay.
And so I was like really hoping the other ones got it.
Mm-hmm.
On today, I walked around and I asked every student, "Are
Okay.
you good?
Okay.
Do you know what's going on?
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me?
Mhm.
Do you want me to read what you've written?
Okay.
Do you want me to give you feedback?"
Mhm.
Because I was concerned about,
Mhm.
are they getting it?
Mhm.
So I wanted to make sure I talked to every single person
Absolutely.
and asked them that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, with that, so that's student attention. But what about going back to presenting information? So you were, what I observed, you're going through each of these documents. You showed your analysis of what that document was, and so how did you feel that that was that second criteria that you wanted me to look for?
Yeah.
How did you feel, or how did you observe that aspect of presenting information?
It felt good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was the Wi-Fi, but in the other classes, their conversation was so good.
Mm-hmm.
It made me rethink some of my analysis.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yes," and that's what I want. I want them to like dive deep into it
Mhm.
and think about things, and I think it's so important for them to share.
Yeah.
And then, like the other students can hear what they're saying.
Mhm.
Because I always tell them, I'm not writing this
Okay.
on
yeah.
that test. You're writing this.
Absolutely.
And I want you to get this, So I did enjoy the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully they got something from that.
Good. Yeah, and there was discussion going on. I did see that, and thinking of how you modeled it, right? It was even though as we've talked about Wi-Fi down, and as I know the lesson was originally supposed to be, they were supposed to show theirs, and then you were showing, well, this is how I approached it, and there was supposed to be
Yes.
that back and forth,
Yes.
but because the internet was down for over half of the class,
Yeah.
so but that was good. That was something very well that I saw of this modeling of this idea of thinking.
Mm.
So my observation, or before I go into anything that I observed, is there anything else that in your reflection that you would say?
I know this is silly, but the district really wants us to do that warm welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found that picture of like a magnifying glass
Yep.
on documents, and I really like the analogy of like, you guys are investigators. You
Mhm.
gotta like dig deep into these documents.
Yeah.
So I really I hope they picked up on that. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Okay, cool. So my when I was observing, even before class started, you're setting the stage. You're outside. You're welcoming your students, bringing in that warm environment, that welcoming environment, and as you said about that warm welcome, you had that, and you did talk about that magnifying glass a little bit, but then also you had your expectations of the day. So when students walked in, they knew exactly what they needed to get out, what the daily objective was, and what the expectation was. So before class even began, you set that stage for them, and that was just a great way of doing it. So I'm going to start with that second criteria, or that second criteria you wanted me to observe, which was presenting information. And to everything that he talked about presenting information, I would agree with. These were, you, as I said, you did very well with showing and that modeling of the modeling of what a document analysis would be like, bringing back those important acronyms like HIP, and I myself knowing a little bit about APUSH, that the importance of using those acronyms to help you when going through the essay writing process, and then with those examples, those visuals, but then in addition to how you scaffold your questions. And I know ideally if internet was on, there would have been probably more of those scaffold questions, but you were even still able to present those questions and digging deeper into the analysis of each of those documents, even though students didn't have them on the screen or have what they've written on the screen. So you did. That was just a very very excellent. So with presenting information, as I said, what I've observed, doing really well on. And so I think as we consider continuous improvement, that of course this is something we can continue to work on, but I think if we move over to that student engagement, I think there's a few more, or that might take precedent at this time, and then later on we can continue talking about other ways for the presenting of information. So as I transition to that, student attention, student engagement, so my perception of this is that the classroom, first of all, the classroom as a whole was quiet, they were not moving around, and that there is the classroom management that you have, they know that, they know where they need to be and how they need to be there. I didn't, students are up walking around, they're not messing around, and so they, as you set that stage of the class, it's looking very well. As I said, with Wi-Fi being down, those who were able to access it, even when it was down, they were where they needed to be, and then I did observe when Wi-Fi started coming up that students, once their Chromebooks started working again, that they were then getting on to their documents as well.
Good.
So even though, as we've said, it was like 25 or 30 minutes into the lesson, Wi-Fi comes back on, students started getting on. And
good.
Once again, that's, those expectations you've set for your students, they're following them. So even, I saw a few students, they try to refresh about every 5 minutes, and then once it got to it, they got to where they needed to be.
Good.
So a few perceptions of mine that I observed, and things that maybe we can dig a little deeper into, and then maybe we can dig deeper into, and then you and I can create a few strategies maybe to address these. So the first one is when you were asking those scaffold questions, when you were asking those, there were some times when you would ask, be about 5 seconds of wait time, you're given wait time, and then no one answers, but then you go into, and then you then provided the answer, and so that's one thing I think we can talk about. How could we how can we engage those students who you've asked that question, you're given the appropriate amount of wait time, and how instead of the teacher giving the answer, how could I either rephrase it, or what's another strategy I could use to call on students to see the pull them. Then the next perception that I have is that when asking those questions, I counted about between 5 to 7 students who were the normal students to respond, and who had great responses and awesome, great responses, and the ideas they brought, especially with HIP, they're bringing awesome perspectives and these great perspectives into how they would use that document. But once again, we think, well, we're having about 5 to 7 respond, but there's almost 30 in here.
Yeah.
And so with that, I put the limit, there's a big limitation on that one because Wi-Fi was down. I can't say, that was an issue, or that was just the day. So and so maybe there would have been more engagement. But with that, I want to ask that clarifying question, because I want to know, was this more of a Wi-Fi thing that's going on? But would you say that in the class, when asking questions, when throwing it, when doing those scaffolding questions, would you say it's normally there are a set of students who answer, or is it more of more of the classes involved?
No, I would say it's the same people.
Okay.
And I think the rest of the class is happy.
Okay.
Like, oh good, someone answered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's something I definitely need to work on.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then and okay, thank you for your honesty with that.
You're welcome.
Right? As I said, I put an asterisk on that one just because I was like, I know Wi-Fi's down, students don't have their documents, and it's a little hard to answer. And so, but thank you for that honesty there.
Yeah.
And so, and those were those main two. As those main two perceptions where we're, as I said, we're asking these great questions. We're giving the appropriate amount of wait time. And then my question is, what do you do when students don't answer? Instead of the teacher giving the answer, how can we pull students in to answer? And then that second, as what we just talked about, is, we have those students who are quick to answer, but what are we doing to help engage, to make sure that we're having the comprehension and understanding from the rest? So, with that being said, we start thinking about objectives. Where can we move forward to address some of these? So my objective, or what I perceive my objective, and you may disagree. If you disagree, please let me know.
Oh, okay.
And if you have a disagreement, please let me know. But my idea for an improvement objective is using attention and participation strategies that would pull for more engagement with students in the classroom.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay.
Can I write that down?
Absolutely. I did give you, absolutely.
Now, what did you say? Attention?
So I would say it's this attention or participation strategies that would, or forgetting how I just phrased it, that would pull for more engagement of students, or that would pull for more
Yeah.
engagements for students. And so,
Okay.
yeah, so on that document, that's our post-conference conference document. Um, the idea of that post-conference document that you're writing on right now simply is just this is a way that you and we can collect those ideas, and then when we have more observations, things like that, these are the specific things we can look for.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
Like I was filling out the top.
okay.
I'm such a student. You fill out the
Alright.
top. Oh, okay.
So that objective that I just said, is that objective? Would that be an objective you would agree upon? That
Oh,
this is
definitely.
Okay.
And I'm glad we're going into fall break. I really am going to research that.
Okay. Okay.
One thing I used to do, and I think I need to bring it back. But like, it felt like this year we were just kind of thrown into it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I used to like give each student, I shouldn't say kid, each student a number,
Mhm.
and then I would have like a coffee mug of popsicle sticks
Okay.
with numbers on it.
Okay.
And I'd be like, number 7, what do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so then, like, they don't know, and I don't know who I'm calling on.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's the most fair way.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I think, that's a great segue into these ideas for activities, or
Oh,
these ideas
yeah.
for activities. And so let's put that one, that's a great one to put down, is, that strategy you used in the past.
Yeah.
And you said you've seen success with that strategy.
Oh, yeah, I need to
Okay.
bring it back.
Okay.
Because I think it does help with the kids, or the students, I call them kids, with the students knowing
Mhm.
you don't know who I'm going to call
Yeah.
on. So it kind of keeps them on their toes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, that as an identified activity, what are some other strategies maybe you've used in the past, you've heard of? Would there any other kind of strategies that you would be interested in trying out?
I really liked your idea.
Okay.
The rally table?
Yeah. So I did talk to you a little bit about that before we started our meeting, and so that would be, this plan of improvement activity that I briefly talked to you about was that rally table, that Kagan
Yeah.
strategy of that rally
Can I
table.
ask, how do you spell Kagan?
I believe it Kaegan.
Oh, okay. See, I forgot that.
So
Okay.
Kagan strategy. So the rally table, to let me re-go over it. I sent you that video. I sent you that video. Part of the reason so we could talk about that. But remember that Kagan strategy was that it uses the idea, since you have your classroom set up in pairs, you're already ready for it.
Okay.
It's the idea where you can, when students have those questions, that really they're sharing that responsibility. That you can either have those questions printed off or have them on your smartboard, and where you give, it can be a time limited or not limit on time, and the idea that you would, when you're going through those questions, each person with just one, you have one paper per group, each person would write out what they would do, and then for the next question, you would write out, the next student could write out what they would do or what they think for that question. And then it's this idea of this, it's technically pair work, but it's not. Technically, it's independent, so one person's on, the other person gets the break, and we shift back and forth. What I talked a little bit briefly about that was the use of the rally table. You're setting yourself up for a few other things, like think, pair, share.
Yeah.
Where we're having a few of those questions, and since we're in these pairs already, that think, pair, share, that you could do it using the idea of the rally table, but also think, pair, share could be that way where you ask that question, you're giving wait time, they're thinking about it, then you're having them talk with one another, have them have that pair time where they're talking about it, and then that share time where they could share. And one idea, using your idea of like the popsicle stick method, or the cold calling, that's where you could just cold call instead of a student, you could cold call a pair.
Yeah.
And that could be another strategy.
I'm gonna write that down. Oh yeah. See, this is great. Because I was thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of strategies for learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you heard of what's that? Teaching hard. I can't remember what it's called now. It's like teaching history. Oh, facing history.
Yep.
And so I wrote down all their ideas that I love.
Okay.
But a lot of them are like review type things.
Okay. Yeah.
Or like learning material.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I love what you said. It's not attention and participation.
Or that engagement. Yeah.
That engagement part. So I like that.
And as I said, we can definitely talk more in future conferences about some of that, presenting information, presenting the curriculum, like what you're talking about. We could, in future conferences, we could discuss that.
Okay.
But as I said, what I observed and what you agreed to, I think if we talk about engagement, if we think about as I said, this is my observance.
Okay.
If we talk about engagement first, then we can jump more on those other things to really bring that.
I agree with that. Yeah, that's good.
So, I've listed them down, various activities as well. Could you tell me what activity, or let's just go back, let's clarify, what activities have we kind of both thrown out there together so far?
Well, I like what I haven't done yet, but I used to do the numbers and the mug.
Yep.
And I really love this rally table.
Okay.
I'm gonna look that up and
Yep.
Kagan styles.
Mm-hmm.
Cause that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just have in like that think, pair, share.
Yep.
So
with that, now, as we know, as educators, there's so many things we could use, right? There's so many different strategies, but that's where it becomes bogged down.
yeah,
Right?
and that's what happens to me. Someone asked me if I use DBQ online. I would love to. It looks great, but there's so much out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes you get bogged down. Yeah.
So, with that, I think we've kind of talked about as with that, so we don't get bogged down. What I see, my perspective is that maybe some activities, or that we could use would be those cold call strategies. Right?
Yeah.
The using those Kagan styles of think, pair, share, and rally table, and just starting there.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Would that be something you would agree with? Would there be anything else that you would want to add to that?
No, I think that's a great start.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one thing that has been said, and you've said a few times, is things that I need to look that up. You've said that a few times, and as your supervisor, that's where I can help with that, where I have these resources that I can send you. So with adding into those activities and we start thinking of those needed resources, well, I would say first part is to give you or to get you some Kagan resources.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask.
Mhm.
Are there books about it?
There are.
Yeah.
But not just books. There's actually opportunities for professional development.
Oh, even better.
So with those Kagan, as I was saying, with Kagan, I do have those resources, but there's those professional development opportunities that I can offer you, and we can move forward with that. And so those would be, as I said, we're talking kind of those resources that I can help you, that I can assist you on. And so to kind of recap, to go over a few of those, or to go over what we've talked about in this post-conference. We first started talking about we came to this agreed objective.
Right.
And that agreed objective of being engagement of our students. And, right, as I said at the beginning, is that we, initially you gave me to look for, and I think and we came to that agreement that we looking at first engagement, and then we can come back to some more of those strategies of presenting curriculum. But I think if we start with engagement first, we'll definitely see I think improvement, and then we can come back and we can go to that. So we talked about that objective to work on. And then we came and we started talking, we went through various activities we could use to help meet that need for those objectives. We talked about the cold call strategy. You brought that up, and you talked about how you've used this in the past and it's worked well. And then we started talking about Kagan, the Think, Pair, Share strategy, but then also the rally table strategy. And would you agree that I think we could start with these three activities, right? Start with those three activities, and then from there we can move on. We can add more.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And then resources needed. As I was saying, you said that phrase. I need to look that up. Oh, that sounds great. And I talked a little bit. Well, that's where I can help you. I can first, yes, I can get you those books, but then also there are professional development opportunities. And would that be something you're interested in?
Oh, yes.
And so with that, we come to kind of almost the conclusion of our post-conference, where starting to talk about how often would you like me to meet, how often we can meet as we start moving with this cycle of continuous improvement. So as we know, we're going into fall break, and so when we come back, so I want to ask you that question. How often would you like to meet and have me come observe, and then we can do those post meetings to talk, and that way we can talk through those strategies. How often would you like, or are you thinking?
I was thinking like maybe every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And you could just watch my implementation of the ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, with that, how about maybe as we just get started, maybe how about at first maybe once a week, and then as those strategies go on, we then do it maybe once every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Well, so with that, we'll set that up. I'll have you just email me good days for me to come in and observe, and we'll do that, and then we'll talk about those times for those post meetings. But once again, I just want to commend you for the atmosphere that you create with your students. It's just such a great atmosphere. How the students talk with you, how you interact. There's just this warm welcome, and I know I've heard just how students just adore being in your class.
Oh, that means the world.
Yeah.
I always love hearing that.
All right. Well, thank you again for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
And enjoy this break.
You enjoy it too.
Okay. All
yeah.
right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.